on him.
We are going to go ahead and get started, folks.
It's all good.
Good morning again, everybody, and welcome once again. So as for last week, I had some very clear ideas about what I was going to talk about today, and then I changed them. So it was Friday evening. As many of you know, I hang out with there's a group. It's my dear friend Kamal Kurucu, who many of you met, who was a Turkish. I guess he's probably a Sufi. He's in a Shia. He's probably best classified as in the Sufi order, but he's fairly mainstream Muslim. And we had like a little reading group. And we were talking around, and the idea of free will came up. And it came up in the context of the Muslim word, the Arabic word. Forgive me, I'm going to butcher Arabic here. But qadr and qadr. Qadr is that which is power, as in Laylat al-Qadr, which is a night in Ramadan when people stay up overnight, stay up overnight to pray, which has echoes of Rahatsu, which is the Japanese celebration of Buddha's enlightenment, where you stay up overnight. So it's the same kind of feeling. I think it's 20 days into Ramadan and there's an overnight. So that's a night of connecting deeply with Allah's power. But it also means that which is predestined, and a core principle in Islam, in Sunni Islam, is essentially Allah knows everything. He knows absolutely everything. So from this side, not from the side of the divine, but from this side, what that looks like is everything I do is predestined. So why bother? Why bother to make an effort? But it's not symmetrical, and what we're going to talk about here is through that asymmetry, which in our language ends up being non-duality, looking at this a different way. So this is not going to be, and then on Wednesday night, Christina, who is also here, she asked a question about free will, which I gave a fairly quick answer to. Looking at free will from a Buddhist perspective, what I'm hoping to do today, what I'm planning to do today, is unpack that a little and not answer, do we have free will, but kind of shift the question and shift the perspective a little bit so we realize that's actually not the right question. Buddha, to my knowledge, never talked about free will per se. He never found the Pali or the Sanskrit or the Chinese word, whichever text you're reading, and talked about free will per se. But he talked about things that were that really got to this topic. And the most important one he talked about. Oops.
Buddhists disagree.
Oh dear. So the most important. That reminds me. I should have done a couple of things here.
Hit the record.
No, I should have changed the views. Yeah. All right. So hopefully I'm now sounding clearer as well because I turned the hissing background off. So what he did talk about was karma.
Really word.
Oh dear. You will be able to see us again shortly, folks, on Zoom. We have two technicians working at it. He talked about karma. And he also talked about views. And we'll come back to views a little later, hopefully, if I remember. But karma, at that time in northern India, there was a diversity of views of karma. It wasn't like everybody else believed one thing and Buddha came along and said, no, it's this one. There was a real diversity of views. And if you read the Upanishad, you'll find there's a lot of different ways of looking at karma. But central to a lot of the views of karma was the idea that this is your karma and you will just be reborn. And it really kind of doesn't matter what you do, because karma is like this predestination thing. And Buddha's teaching was very clearly, no, that's not the right way of looking at this. You have a choice right now. And right now, your intention, your action, your intention, it's a word, karma is a word that doesn't have a really direct translation. Action, intention, choice, right now affects your future, and specifically your future rebirth, ultimately no rebirth. So that's a take on it. Now I'm going to jump on that to give a different perspective, and then we'll kind of bring stuff together. If you look in the 1960s, there was a guy by the name of Benjamin Libet, I think his name was, who was some form of psychologist, neuroscientist. He was conducting studies on consciousness and such matters. And one of the tests he performed said, "Does free will, what's this free will thing?" So he wired up people's heads and he tested free will. So he got people, he'd have people have their hand out and decide when to drop or raise their wrist. And he'd look for brain activity, and he was testing 3 points. Point one was when brain activity started around lifting the wrist. Point two was when the person made the conscious decision to lift the wrist, as in they realized they decided, it became in their own interior sense, volition. And then point three was when did it actually happen? Now, this was all hotly contested for a while about what data points he was actually checking. And of course, when somebody says they're aware of it, there's a delay there too. But in simple terms, the results were brain activity starts, then about 200 milliseconds later, the person blinks their eyes or moves their head or does something to indicate, I've decided to raise my hand. And then about 350 milliseconds later, they raise their hand. So it's like a quarter of a second between brain activity starting and the conscious choice. And then another quarter of a second, a third of a second before it actually happens. Oh my goodness, no free will, no free will. Free will doesn't exist. Well, careful what we're testing here. Because it shouldn't.
That was Wilbur Penfield, or?
No, the name was Benjamin Libet is the name I have.
Oh.
But there could be another person who did that
Mhm.
too, Karen. I mean, I've just skimmed the surface here.
Mhm.
And what matters is, because this is now fairly solid science, there's a lot of people who got involved in it, so it's fairly solid science of the staging of this. And in an important sense, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, because of course, if consciousness and the brain are connected, of course we're going to start thinking before we do anything. I mean, of course, brain activity predates this. How can it not? Otherwise, we end up with this disembodied consciousness making a decision, then decided to land in the body and start doing it. So, of course. But there's also, so what are we really testing here? Because Libet then went on to say, he went on to realize that, okay, the person could make the decision to do this, and then they could change their mind and not do it. So there's not free will, but there's free won't, if you like. And whether I raise my hand or not, really, does that really matter? Is that how we test free will? Because what really matters, surely, it's like, okay, so I'm going on a personal retreat next Thursday. I've made that decision. I'm going to go away for a few days. And there's all sorts of things I've decided to do or not to do before that. These are much longer term things. And this obviously doesn't test any of that. So what are we really testing? So when people say there is no free will, a lot of the time they're landing on this very narrow but very important test. If we go back to the Quranic view, where the Quran is laced with Allah stating that he knows everything, usually written in the mouth, right? But he or she knows everything. So it's laced with this. And within Islam, Muslims talk about the large will and the small will. And the large will is Allah's will, is God's will, which is what we see as predestination. But then there's the small will, which is the little bit that we can do. And the same text says we have the ability to do good acts and evil acts, and we will be judged on our acts. So what this is saying, it's how it lands. we think we have free will. We think we have this freedom. We think we're choosing to do something. How do we choose? How do we respond? Do we respond with love? Do we respond with some negative reaction, hatred, animosity, anger? That is a choice. How do we choose to respond? And in our practice, and we're all going to hear sitting this morning, in our practice, an awful lot of all our precepts are worded in the negative. There are places where they're worded in the positive, but it's like, do not take what's not freely offered, do not kill, do not engage in intoxicants or in inappropriate personal relationships. These are all things I won't do. So these are all downregulated, and these are all saying, I'm not going to cause harm. And to limits, we have free won't. These are then actions we can take. So I'm jumping around a little bit here, I know, but all these fit in. Many of the important things in my life, I have absolutely no control over at all. Born in the UK at the time when it was very comfortably well-off country, in a comfortable middle-class family, to well-educated parents, Caucasian, fully able, male, cisgendered, well-educated. I was well-educated. My parents cared about my education. I had no control over any of these things. And we try and focus so much on the things we can control, and so we get so caught up on this free will that we don't recognize the extent to which we don't control, but we do have responsibility for how we respond. We do have accountability for how we respond. So I'm in this body, and I can handle being in this body a number of different ways. It's not that I'm in this body that matters. It's probably not even some of the actions that happen with this body. It's the intention behind the actions that matters. So our practice, slowing down, seeing things more clearly, recognizing these little moments where we can act and we choose not to act. So more and more, we're slowing things down and we are gaining control of our choices in the moment. And these are choices at the level of, the other thing would have said that's absolutely relevant. I teach two things. I teach suffering and the end of suffering. I teach dukkha and the end of dukkha. And so are our choices in the moment in the direction of reducing dukkha or of increasing dukkha? If they're unintentional choices, they're probably going to be causing suffering here and suffering there. But we have the ability in that moment to slow down and make choices about whether to do something or not through that lens. And as we more and more move to operating through that lens, what happens more and more is this sense of rigid identity with this sack of skin and bones starts to dissolve. And I start to realize I'm not this sack of skin and bones. That includes my wife. I mean, it's just a bigger envelope. It includes my kids. It includes all of you. I mean, it includes the whole world. It is the whole world. So this very limited envelope out of which I think I'm acting starts to dissolve. And from that different place of relationship, that different way of relating to this body and to the world, this whole question of free will, free won't, it just shifts. It totally shifts. Because the illusion of control disappears. There's presence, absolutely there's presence. And there's the ability to be present with love and with compassion, which is profoundly important. It is the heart of what we're talking about here. But beyond that, the sense of control really starts to disappear. This body, which until 3 months ago, 4 months ago, I thought was pretty much indestructible, because this body came from a father who drank a bottle of wine until he was 85 years old, and his two brothers are still carrying on that way. One of them still smoking. And this is indestructible. And then 3 months ago, it had a heart attack and it nearly died. Totally unexpected. Any one of us could walk out that door right now and be hit by the number 16 bus. It's just, we're out of control. We don't have control. And so the illusion of control starts to disappear. And the interest in having control also starts to disappear. Because the interest in having control is all about calcifying this sense of an I, hardening this sense of a me that's in the middle of my free will, my decisions. If there's no me in the middle of this, who is there to have the free will? Who is there to make the decisions? So the practice takes us in the direction of dissolving this illusion of an I, of a separate I. And as the separate I dissolves, the illusion of control dissolves, and even the desire to have control dissolves. And so but there were questions. Buddha categorized questions in different ways. There were, I think, 4 different classifications of questions. So when somebody asked him a question, he actually identified these. There were questions which he just answered directly. So he asked the question, what do you teach? I took it on the end of it. Tell me about the dependent causation. Well, we went through the list of 12 and back down. So those are questions he just answered directly. Is the universe finite? He just wouldn't answer that, because it's not that it's unanswerable. It's just it's not a well-formed question, and there is no way of forming that question well within this realm of duality. It does not match language. So he just put that one aside. He wouldn't answer that. There's Tathagata, does Buddha exist after death? He wouldn't answer that one for the same reason. It's just, it doesn't compute. So the questions that he will put aside. This question, I will posit, is in neither of those categories. So it's somewhere in the middle. And in the middle, there's a couple of different ways he would approach it, but they're basically questions to explore, break down, engage in Q&A and discussion, and realize that's not really the right question. The right question isn't, is there free will? The right question is around, why do I care if there's free will or not? And we dissect that question and we realize it's about this sense of an I and this illusion of an I. And that's why we even care about the question. There was something else that just crossed my mind. Just total no control, loss of control. Oh, I know what I was going to. And the other thing he would say, I said I'd come back to views, and here I do, come back to views. There's a whole series of suttas, short suttas in verse, which I'm covering on Thursday evenings, the Atthakavagga, the Book of Eights. And many of those are about views and about how we should not hold on to views. And it's not the having opinions or letting things form in order to help you decide where to go, but it's holding on to views that's the problem. So this is one, is there free will? Well, it's not something to hold on to. We can't hold on to a defined answer to is there free will, because it's a complicated, convoluted question. There's a lot of different elements to this question. What matters out of this question? What matters is, what do we have control of? Where is our realm of choice, and how do we live within that to help ourselves become happy and dukkha and suffering, and to act in the world in a way that helps others and so. And what we know, and we all know this from our own experience, what we know is that we think we have this thing called free will. And if we slow down and we cultivate attention and mindfulness, then we absolutely do have the ability right now, to make momentary decisions, instantaneous decisions, and to act in ways that reduce suffering, that create happiness. Again and again, moment by moment, we have this ability. And we also know that this is trainable, and if we start doing this and we keep working on this, that muscle gets stronger and stronger. And our capacity to hold the suffering of others grows. Stuff that is annoying and irritating and makes us angry doesn't stick like it used to. And it keeps on not sticking, and we get lighter and lighter. And we find more people around us smiling, because that's the energy we're carrying. So we absolutely know from our own experience that we have this ability moment by moment to make these choices. So the question of free will is actually a lens to a larger category of kind of nonsense that comes up in life. It doesn't matter. What matters is, what do we know now? How do we act in the world right now in the direction of happiness? So what does that bring up for us? Questions, comments? Karen and then Anand.
What was it that you were saying about the small, not the self?
Will.
First. Okay. Yeah, this is really a perplexing dilemma because it seems like, to achieve a greater sense of maybe almost empowerment, it's a matter of alignment, not whether this will is my own, the small self or will,
Yes.
what have you, or the larger. It's almost like surrendering to
Yes.
a greater will, giving up the need or the attachment
Yes.
to one's individual free will, just kind of puts you in alignment, so in that way you're giving it up,
Yes.
but sort of consciously doing so. But it's just such a fascinating question.
And you're giving it up in order to gain everything.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why predestination and then double predestination in Calvinism, it shows up all over the place, because this question then gets reduced to this logical construct.
Mm-hmm.
But if we stay in the spiritual realm and the non-dual realm, it's about surrendering this. Actually, it's a large chunk of it's a large chunk of ego. We're surrendering that into alignment, as you put it. Absolutely, it is into alignment in order to gain everything. And the language of Buddhism is just a little different, because we're not surrendering it to the will of Allah.
Yeah.
We're opening up to suchness, if you want. I'm sorry, you're going to add something.
Even the studies that you were talking about, saying the neural activity, following a certain sequence, but then if you go to the original thought, and before the decision comes into play, where did that thought originate? There's the assumption that the person is thinking it is, aware and then making a decision. But did that awareness come from a collective consciousness?
Absolutely.
Like, where did that come from? The other piece of this that I found myself really contemplating was the idea of judgment. I get hung up on that term because we have a sort of colloquial concept of judgment, that we're judging something as right or wrong, good or bad, something in the realm of duality. And in fact, I think that judgment is sort of inescapable just because of the faculties of the mind. We have a tendency to classify things. And if we're not like giving up that sense of personal will and aligning with a greater will, then of course we would be not necessarily judged as good or bad, but observed. I don't know if I can explain this well. It's clear in my mind, but the idea that, judgment, again, isn't like putting something in a category. It's like being able to see it. You can actually judge or perceive, let's just say perception. I think we get perception and judgment kind of confused. So we will be perceived, we will be seen as not in alignment. But if we have merged with something greater, you can no longer see something that's merged.
Yeah.
If I have a drop of water and cast it into the ocean, you can no longer see it. It has disappeared. So it's a paradox there, because in a sense, it has enlarged itself by becoming one with this ocean, but it also has disappeared.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I'm seeing the issue of will.
A couple of thoughts on that. Thought one, judgment. Yes, judging things as good or bad, good or evil, creates separation and is, it's the wrong direction for our practice, right? I mean, it's just not healthy because it causes hardening and suffering. Judging, though, from the standpoint of, was that skillful? Is that something I should do more of? Is that something I can learn from? Skillful being, is it increasing or reducing suffering? Was that skillful, or was that unskillful? This is a useful way of judging, and it's a way that I'm not actually judging other people. I'm judging behavior, I'm judging attributes, I'm judging what's going on around me to see if there's something I can learn from here to improve myself and my own path. And the second one, just a word on, is the not being judged but being seen. As we become more solid on our practice, we become more certain in our practice. And so this being seen just doesn't matter. Right now, it feels like it matters, but it just doesn't matter once you start really moving forward. Anand.
Yeah, it's a very deep topic. I think there is a lot came to me. But I don't know. I don't think I know meaning of the free will. I was the way I was the way I was thinking, the lens that you're talking about is exactly the right intention, right? It's the way I more and more see that right intention, and I think that the big will and small will, it's in I think it's taught in Hinduism also, right? Like they have duality, there is a non-dual, so there are different doctrines there. It's very most complex subject, that duality, non-duality, the will and small will and big will, because that no one could able to explain. If there is only the big will, then what is there for us to really, the role. So that's, so I think it's a practicing the right intention. I always struggle to see what is right intention.
That's always the question.
That's
And this is a massive topic. It's one that philosophers for hundreds of years have struggled with, and they still struggle with it. You don't have consensus around it. And you never will have consensus around this. If you can't, it's like, but I used to have conversations with my daughter when she was an undergraduate. She'd call me once or twice a year and say, "Daddy, something's going on, something's going on." And I said, "Mom, just slow down. In 5 years, will this matter? And she'd say, no, Daddy. Okay, so let's start there. And this question, will this make you happy? Will it make anybody else happy if we answer this? The answer is no. No, it won't. So what do we do with it? We'll look at what's hiding underneath this question. And what's really hiding underneath this question is this sense of an identity, this need to be in control, and this misguided sense of how we create happiness in life. Everybody's trying to be happy, we're just most of the time not doing it skillfully. So if we can learn from this how to be a little more skillful about that and let go of the need to control stuff, we'll approach it different. Susan, what do you want?
This may just be a matter of semantics, but isn't that sort of not judging someone, but just seeing the wisdom in
Yeah.
doing it this way or that way? I think of it as discernment, right?
Yeah.
That I'm just growing in wisdom because I'm discerning
Yes.
the whole how this is going to harm somebody else, harm me, or
Yeah.
It's a better one.
Valerie.
I'm gonna argue that the question, is there free will, does matter a lot.
Mhm.
And one reason I think that Levitt got scared and decided to invent a free want, is the same reason that Darwin got scared with the implications of the theory of evolution and how it will kill the divine power and people's delusions. The same reason Levitt pulled back is the fact that there are so many people who don't believe in free will, but they are compatibilists. They
Yeah.
try to invent something very similar to the big will and the small will. It's like there is no free will, but we still can act as free will actors. That's why there is like a free want. We can decide to change it. And so that this fear of realizing that you're not in control, there is like no homunculus that is in control of these actions. Still, the question of is there free will matters a lot, because even if you think that you are having the right intention to do something, the question to ask yourself is, what made you the kind of person, the kind of organism that would form that intention which you think is the right intention? What kind of circumstances in your life and within your organism led you to get to that point? In other words, like I go back again and again to the conditioned arising. There is nothing but conditioned arising. So nothing arises without the previous conditions.
Mhm.
For example, you think that you go to the primary elections, right?
Primaries?
What?
Memories.
The primaries, and you decide, for example, to look at the Republican ballot, and you see that every single question there is one version of, do you hate immigrants? So what would get, these kinds of people to really associate with that type of question? And one answer for, people who are born in rural situation, in more tribal, so to speak,
Mhm.
situation, is that they have just an increased sense of anger and hatred against outsiders. So it is really important for us to recognize the lack of free will, because, centuries ago, people burned at the stake those who had seizures because they thought that they were possessed, yes, by demons.
Okay.
But we know better now not to burn them. There are multiple cases in which people are about to become mass shooters, and then they discover that they have a brain tumor that puts pressure on their amygdala, and they become very violent and disturbed and really angry. And once you remove the tumor, they become the kind of nice person that they were pre-tumor. And so the question is, there is no free will. Now people say, well, they get scared mostly because, well, now what are we going to do? Are we going to let all the criminals out of the jails and just basically kill us? Well, there's no free will. So we know that these are not monsters, they have conditions that led them to behave in certain ways. But we also have become the kinds of people created by conditions that would want to protect those who they could hurt potentially. So we have to figure out ways to protect them. So in that sense, the lack of free will and the question is there free will is really an important question.
It is an important question from that perspective. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
Rosemary. You're on mute, Rosemary.
Okay,
There you go.
I succeeded through perseverance and awareness. This is related to the former comment, except I think I come out another way. As you were saying at one point, life needs, or a conscious life and a good life needs to, in order to behave well, we need to slow down and be aware of where we are and what our impulses are and what the seeds in us are, because there are different seeds deep down. And if we slow down, which I haven't done enough in my life, if we slow down and are aware of the conditions of the present, which connect with all the past, but this, I'm not going to go back to Neanderthals, but even it connects with that. But if we slow down, we can be in a better position to make choices and to exercise our free will in a good way. And I am going to make judgments about that. I mean, why did Buddha say, do this, not that? Why did Buddha, he didn't scream it, chastise some followers, some individual monk sometime for being a gossip or whatever. And it's going to be harder for people to slow down and be aware. It's going to be harder for people to, even once they've slowed down, to control their impulses. I mean, it's partly a matter of, I wouldn't say, I'll say fate, but that's also one of your conditions, what rotten family you were grown up in, what brain tumor you have where. But as much as you can, slow down, and that is going to make you more aware of the choices you're making and increase your ability to make good choices. So I'll try to start doing that from now on. That's it.
And just to add a couple of quick thoughts to that, and then we'll finish up. The good choices, you were talking about judging and good choices. And again, to me, that is about good. There isn't an ethical judgment. It's a judgment on whether it's skillful. The Buddha said, do this, don't do that, based on whether it was a skillful behavior or not, through this lens of ending suffering. And the idea that slowing things down allows us to make better choices. This is absolutely the teaching of karma, and this is absolutely the experience of karma, which is, I know in my own life, by slowing things down, it has allowed me to not do things I would have done in the past that would have hurt people and hurt myself, cause suffering. And the more time I spend sitting and slowing things down, the more that is what happens, and the world becomes a brighter place for me and for people around me. I know that's what happens in me. So I agree with you, Neville. The question is an important question, but to me, the practice takes us to this place, which is, what do I do with this? And that's what I can do with this. So let's finish there. Let's go to the inside back.
Throw one thing out super quick. There is a book called Freewill. Some of you may have read it before by Sam Harris, who also wrote Waking Up. So
Thank you.
dive into that more.
Thank you, Karen. Let's go to the inside back cover of your chunk cards, and we will do the 4 vowels together. It's called Bodhisattva 4 vowels.
Beings of ignorance, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Love feels unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Peace are numberless, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it. Beings are numberless, I vow to awaken them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable, I vow to embody it.
Announcements, just one quick thing before my early announcement. The volunteer stuff, we've all seen that going on. Thank you, Coco, for the beautiful flowers today. Thank you, Susan, for the beautiful flowers. I think it was last week you brought flowers. And thank you, everybody, for making tea. And you received a newsletter the other day. Well, Amit wrote the newsletter and delivered that. So we've got people taking on responsibilities, and it's just wonderful. Bear with us. We're still trying to figure this out. It'll take us a while to step through it, and there'll be a lot of missteps. Many folks have received a questionnaire, and we've got many responses, and we'll be talking to many people about talking to you all about that. If you have not, please consider doing so. If you've not received that questionnaire and would like to receive it, please let Kevin, who was on here, but Kevin or I know, and we'll get you that questionnaire. So thank you for doing this. It means a lot to the community. Bruce.
Okay, so announcements. Basically reading from the website. There's a copy of these out in the hallway there, so it went up on the way out. Anyway, this evening we have mindfulness in practice in the Plum Village Division with the Peach Blossom Saga. That's here in person and on Zoom at 6. Tuesdays, Tai Chi here at 7:30. Wednesday reading group at 8 o'clock on Zoom. And Thursday evening practice here and on Zoom with Gareth at 7:30. And let's see, the Saturday evening restorative yoga practice with Clay. Is that every week?
It's every week.
Every week, okay, so that's Saturday evening at 7:30, right here. Okay, and coming up on as far as retreats, got Breath and Brush, which is a 1-day retreat with Sokai, Charlie Vogt, and Yashin Erica Gregemeyer, which will involve calligraphy as a path to concentration. That's Saturday, June 15th, beginning at 9 a.m. I believe that's all day in person here. Okay, and then on the 29th, Align, Stretch and Let Go, Yoga with Sally. That'll be here In person, of course, 9:30 AM on Saturday, the 29th. And, the thing I don't have on here is the community service meeting.
I don't remember when that is. Clay?
It's the second Monday,
Second Monday.
Second Monday.
every month, so not
Every-
tomorrow, but next.
Next
Okay,
one.
so every month on the second Monday, there'll be a mini, is that here, just here?
Very cool.
It's soon.
So it's only on this, okay. And that will be reviewing the past community service projects that we've done and talking about what to do in the future. And just as a reminder, there's a Donna Basket by the tour. Period, cash or PayPal via the QR code or on the website. Anything has something else?
Yes, there is a movie and discussion today, 2 to 4. The movie is called Nourished and Enlightened with vegan bites afterwards in Roswell. If you're interested, 2 to 4, let me know. I'll give you the address.
What is the movie name you said?
Nourished and Enlightened.
Nourishing and Light.
Clay,
I just want to bring attention that we do have a community service project coming up soon next month. It's the backpack project.
right,
And so we're just harvesting small donations so that we can buy life essentials for housing insecure people. If you go online, you can see a chart to illustrate exactly how much little you need to give to really make a difference. But we're just trying to collect even just like quarters and dollars to leverage towards that project because it's going to come to fruition, first week in July.
What's the date? I don't remember.
I think it's the 6th.
July 6th.
Thank you. That's enough. July 6th here. Bring your family to do the work.
And
And if you choose to donate to that through our website or donations, make a comment with that saying you wish it to go to the backpack fund.
that's what I was gonna say.
Sorry.
What he said.
I will add, sorry,
No, I was, answer my question.
I can't remember the date, but it's visible, it's clearly visible on the front page of our website. Jan Willis, who is a very distinguished scholar and Tibetan Buddhist, is going to be here one Sunday in about 5 or 6 weeks delivering the Dharma talk. So look for that and join us for that. Anything else, folks? May you have every good blessing by the power of all the Buddhas, by the power of all the Dhammas, by the power of all the Sangha. May you ever be well. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your support, participation, your smiles, your energy. It's wonderful to see everybody. Bye-bye, Zoom. How many people are going to be going for lunch? We go to lunch at Mama Vegan, if you would like to join us. Please do. So hold your hands up again so I can get a quick count. Yeah, there's probably one table. We'll probably all get around that.
You know,
table.
how many?